I'll be speaking first, and then we have Kathy. She'll go second, and Leah last. And we hope to have a little bit of time at the end for questions and answers. We're not promising you the world, but we are promising you some good things to say and some good directions. And I see we've got people from all over the place with us, so that's very good. For your information, as I'm waiting for more people to join us, I was just speaking last week in the Isle of Man. That's just a little island, actually, but it is a sort of an independent state. And I was in Scotland, and the Canadian stories are very, very powerful there because they're being told that they should be legalizing this and Canadian style and everything. But when they hear about what's going on in Canada, it does cause a lot of stir and difficulty for them. The interesting thing is the other side has already tried to undo our stories by going there saying, oh, this would never happen in Scotland. This would never happen in, and of course, so the biggest thing I'm doing is I'm telling them the stories and explaining to them why this would happen there if they were to legalize. Maybe not as quick. Everything's different in different jurisdictions, but no, there's no guarantee that this won't happen. Thank you very much for joining us. As I said, my name's Alex Schadenberg. I'm the Executive Director of the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. Just so you know, we have Emily in the office taking care of things, so I don't have to worry about letting people in and the rest of it. And we've got Kathy with us from Compassionate Community Care, and also Leah, who's a human rights lawyer, and she's from Ottawa, who's with us right now. So I think this will be an excellent 1 hour to share with us. So we all know that euthanasia was legalized in 2016. I'm not going to go through any new information on that. We did so by creating an exception to homicide in our criminal code. So when the other side calls this medical aid in dying, and I call this murder or killing, I know they don't like the language, but the fact of it is that's exactly what it is. The law gives doctors and nurse practitioners, that is, in Canada, the right to kill you. That's what it does. That's what the law actually does. Okay, the law was expanded in March of 2021. It was done by removing the terminal illness requirement from the law. They removed the 10-day waiting period from people who were not. For people who were terminally ill, meaning that if you were terminally ill, you could have a same-day death. For people who were not terminally ill, who would now qualify based on having an irremediable medical condition, I'll go into that in 1 second, those people would have a 90-day waiting period. So that 90-day waiting period is very interesting because I'm under the opinion, based on the data, that there's a lot of people who would actually qualify under that 90-day waiting period who are being treated as if they're terminally ill. And we are also, at that time in March 2020, we legalized euthanasia for mental illness alone, but the government started with a 2-year moratorium. They added another year on, and then more recently they've backed it off until March of 2027. Remember, they haven't said no to it. They just keep backing it off. And that's an important point when we're looking at what's happening in Canada right now with this issue. Bill C-7 was passed. So as I say, it created a 2-track law, Bill C-7. There's no waiting period for the terminally ill, and 90-day waiting period for those who are not terminally ill. And they had this whole situation based on an irremediable medical condition. What is an irremediable medical condition? That's the one thing. It's not really defined in the law, but it tends to mean that you would have a chronic condition. So you'd have a condition which is not improving, possibly getting worse. And so that would be like a disability. So in the disability community, and you see the picture on my PowerPoint, during Bill C-7, when they were saying why us, it's because they were absolutely correct. The law was to kill them. Of course, it takes in many more people at the same time. Not to say that I'm not concerned about people with disabilities. According to 2022 data, remember, Health Canada is very slow in releasing its data. So the last official numbers we have are 13,241. But based on the Quebec, Ontario, Alberta, and Nova Scotia data, and I have actually now most of the data from British Columbia too, I'm predicting that there might be a little less than 16,000, but approximately 16,000 euthanasia deaths were in 2023. If you consider that, that puts us in the bracket of around 5% of all deaths were euthanasia in 2023. Also, that makes us the same as the Netherlands. What's important about that is they legalized in 2002. What's more important than that is that Quebec is now the highest rate in the world at 7.3% of all deaths. And of course, what's significant about that, as much as it's a blight in our country, there's no happiness in this when I'm saying this. The fact of it is that shows you how fast it's been normalized in our country, and that's a big concern because that's where the big challenge now is how do you unnormalize something that's been normalized. It's a very difficult place we're in. We've had lots of stories. Now, it's these stories that are actually very powerful when you're talking to people in, let's say, Scotland, the Isle of Man. I was speaking to Westminster, to the House of Lords in the UK back in November, and there's the same thing. It's the stories that are powerful because, you know, these are the things that people don't expect when you legalize this. They're thinking of the hard case. Everyone's thinking of, oh, well, I wouldn't want to be terminally ill and suffering uncontrolled pain. That's what they're thinking. Terminally ill, suffering uncontrolled pain. But of course, when you legalize this, then you open a new door. Once you open the one door, there's a new door. Another door is behind it. And that's all these other cases that we now have, like the 51-year-old woman who died by euthanasia based on multiple chemical sensitivities. This was a couple years ago already now. And then, but the key to that was is you have then, after she died, and you had this little media article about the fact that she had died by medical aid in dying. Then after that, you had the case of the 31-year-old woman who was approved for euthanasia, also based on multiple chemical sensitivities. There was a GoFundMe page that was set up that helped her out, and they did help her find a place to live. The point of it is why are you approving euthanasia based on multiple chemical sensitivities? Yes, these people have a type of a disability which is significant, but of course the treatment for multiple chemical sensitivities is a clean place to live, right? You give them a clean place to live, then they're not constantly suffering from their chemical reactions that they're having in their body. There's a story of the 23-year-old man we had in Ontario. That was a very important story because he remained alive because his mother was very upset that her 23-year-old son was approved for euthanasia based on being a diabetic. Think about that. There's lots of diabetic people, lots of diabetic young people. He was insulin-dependent diabetic. His story was exasperated by the fact that during COVID, he became very depressed and had stopped taking insulin, which didn't work out for him at all. It worked out very poorly for him. The point of it is that at this point, when he was approved for euthanasia, he's actually technically stable. Now, he had lost some of his eyesight. He had other health difficulties related to the fact that he wasn't taking insulin for a period of time and he was insulin dependent. Nonetheless, at this point, he is stable and he wants to die. Now, his wanting to die was probably more related to his depression, his mental angst related to his loss of eyesight and things like that. He still had eyesight, but you know, his mother saved his life because she named the doctor who was willing to kill her son. I'm not suggesting that that's the answer all the time, but what she did is she went to the media, she went to the government, she made a big deal about her. We helped her with her petition. It was her petition, though. It was her petition. We helped her with her petition to get it out there, and she saved her son. There's a story of Amir Farsu. He was a man in St. Catharines who the building he was living in was taken over by a new owner, and they were going to repair the building, and they told Amir he had to move out, but he was on a situation of subsidized rent. He could not afford, under his disability, any place to rent unless it was subsidized. But as you know, the problem with subsidized rent is there's a long list of people on the waiting list for subsidized rent, subsidized housing. So he was out of luck if he were out of there. And he went to be approved for euthanasia, not because he wanted to die, because he was in fear of homelessness. A GoFundMe page helped him out. The veteran stories, this very powerful, you know, the veteran stories, even though, you know, some of them seem like they were very powerful because all countries have veterans who have served their countries. All countries can imagine how terrible this concept is what happened. So you first had the man who had served our country in Afghanistan, right? Who had PTSD, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder. He went to Veterans Affairs for help, to get psychiatric help, to get whatever help he needed, and he was told that he should be asking for medical aid in dying, euthanasia. He could ask for that, and then of course, then the Veterans Affairs, our Minister of Veterans Affairs, who at the time was Lawrence Macaulay, he had a press conference and he said, "Oh, that was one bad case," right? He said it was one bad case. He said that you know, it was a rogue employee, one bad case. But as soon as he said that, of course, more cases came up. You know, once you go to the media and tell them it was one bad case and there were more, well, then more come up. Now, we learned that there had been approximately 6. There might have obviously been more. And then the story of Christine Gauthier came up. And she was a retired Canadian soldier. She was a Paralympic athlete. She was asking Veterans Affairs for what? Help with a wheelchair lift. Now that's very reasonable. And now, of course, let's be brutally honest that how the story goes that Christine Gauthier was being basically not given what she needs. So she was like the squeaky wheel. She was calling them. She was lobbying them for help getting a wheelchair lift in her home. She needed it. And they told her finally, Madam, if you're really so desperate, we can give you medical assistance in dying. That shows you the culture shift also in the country, more than, in some ways more than anything else, that someone would actually have the audacity to say that to someone. It shows you what the shift we've had. Then, of course, there was a story which has a lot of power. Catherine Mentler was experiencing suicidal ideation, went to the Vancouver General Hospital in June of 2023 for help. She's a woman who I talked to on the phone several times. She's very clear about this, that she has experienced suicidal ideation before, so she understood she needed help. She was not in any way wanting to die. What happened is that the counselor had told her there was no available beds, meaning we can't admit you. She was looking to be admitted to be protected from herself because she was so suicidal at that moment. No beds available, and she couldn't see a psychiatrist until November. Now remember, we're talking about June 2023. And then she was asked if she had considered medically assisted suicide. Now let's think about this, how crazy this is. You could say, once again, this is a rogue employee, but it's also massive culture shift, especially since when you read the full story, Catherine Mentler talks about the fact that the counselor had told her that there was a similar case she had just dealt with, and this woman had come to her in a similar situation, and she said, I was so relieved when I heard that woman had died by drowning. Now think about that. You have suicidal ideation, and your counselor is not only talking to you about medically assisted suicide, but your counselor is also talking to you about a previous client who died by drowning. When I was talking to Catherine, she made it very clear to me, Alex, she didn't say she had died by suicide. She had said the woman had died by drowning. So, whatever happened, I don't know. We can't say, but you know what we're getting to. This also shows you the crisis in our healthcare system, which is also causing a lot of our problems with euthanasia. There's currently the court case in Alberta, and we know this case very well, concerns a 27-year-old autistic woman who has been approved for euthanasia. The father of the woman is trying to stop this euthanasia death. The father says that she does not have an irremediable medical condition. In fact, he says she has no medical condition. There's no issue here. He says that she wants to die. Now, let's be brutally honest about our human reality. There are times in people's lives when they actually want to die. In the case of the previous slide, when I was talking about Catherine Mentler at that point was going through suicidal ideation. She didn't actually want to die, but she knew that how she was feeling, she was afraid that she was going to cause her own death. Anyway, the father is saying that the reason she is telling the doctors that she's in such pain is not because she is in such pain. It's because she knows that that is how she would get approved for MAID euthanasia, okay? The doctor had approved her based on an unknown cause of pain. That's what it said on the application, unknown cause of pain. You're going to kill somebody, but you don't know the cause of pain. Well, then there's been these other stories which are quite powerful, and then these are out of Vancouver. So the first story that hit was the one of Alison DeCluso. She was diagnosed with abdominal cancer. She was told by BC Cancer that they would not be offering her treatment because the odds of her recovery were pretty low. But they did offer her euthanasia. They offered her medical aid in dying. So in the article, like DeClose is quite clear about this, they offered me no treatment. They told her to go home, prepare her funeral and everything, close off, all relationships, say goodbye to people, no treatment. So instead what she did is she called around to different cancer treatment places in the US. She ended up receiving treatment at the Institute for Cancer Care at Mercy Medical Center in Baltimore. She went into full remission. The picture of her here was last November. So after she went into remission from her treatment, which they said, of course, had a low chance of recovery, she decided she should get married to her then boyfriend, or however the relationship was. So that's a picture of them in Hawaii on their honeymoon. This is after her cancer treatment. She's in Hawaii after her honeymoon. And the reason this story came to the media in British Columbia was because she was seeking for the BC healthcare to pay her cancer care costs because they did not offer her cancer treatment. When that story hit the media, then we see the next story was from Mary Griffin's family of Victoria, BC. You'll see that there's a constant thing here about Victoria, BC. I'm assuming Victoria, BC is having a bit of a crisis when it deals with cancer care right now. Mary Griffin of Victoria, BC died by euthanasia. She was forced to wait 10 weeks just to see an oncologist. What happened is she was diagnosed on March 17th, 2023. And when she was diagnosed, the oncologist had said, you know, it would have been nice if we'd seen you earlier. Well, anyway, the fact of it is they said that her cancer had spread to the point where there was no point providing her treatment. She died by euthanasia. Now, in the case of Mary Griffin was actually a pro-euthanasia person, but the family was still very upset because any available treatment was not provided for her. Dan Quayle died on December 5th, 2023. Dan is a little bit different. He did get to see his oncologist. He was told that he had a treatable cancer, but then he was put into the queue. He was waiting for his cancer treatment. After 10 weeks of waiting for his treatment, he was told that his treatment had progressed or it had expanded to the point where there was no use providing him any treatment. He died by euthanasia on December 5th. So what you're seeing here is the other cases which are really rocking the socks of the rest of the world when they actually see these things. The lack of medical treatment or availability of medical treatment is causing people to die by euthanasia. Now, and they say this is all about my body, my choice. Is it my choice when there is no treatment for me? Family of Joan Rowaway. This you can't make up. Their family was threatened by the BC Health Authority to have their mother taken away from them because they were accused of denying her right to die. So what happened is Joan had cancer. You see the picture here with her daughter and her son-in-law, and that she was living with them as she was dying. So Joan had cancer, and the oncologist has said there's no further treatment we can offer you. That's not the issue. The issue is during that conversation, Joan admitted that yes, the issue of medical aid in dying did come up. Joan said she had never asked for it though. So you can see here, she's clearly terminally ill. No one's questioning that. They say there's no further treatment for her, but in this case, the oncologist actually approved her for euthanasia. And then you've got the Fraser Health Authority. Now, you guys know, if you don't know about the Fraser Health Authority, just look at the Delta Hospital Society story. Anyway, Fraser Health Authority then contacted the family saying, we're coming to pick up Joan for her maid. Can't make this stuff up. Really, you can't. And of course, the family said Joan never asked for maid. They were told, of course, that they were denying their mother her right to die. They sent 2 people over to get Joan. The family didn't let them in the house. And then they sent another authority over, a representative over, who actually was smart enough to ask Joan if she wanted it, and she said no. That shows you the craziness. Now, euthanasia for mental illness. This is now, we'll get into that in a second, but here's the whole point about it. You need to have an irremediable medical condition in Canada now. So we got rid of that terminal illness requirement. What's remaining in the law is an irremediable medical condition. So yes, in the law, you also have to be suffering. But as I said, with suffering, it's the same thing with the girl who's 27, who's autistic. Suffering, if I tell you I'm suffering, you can't tell me I'm not. It's totally, there's nothing that you can say, oh, I can understand, yes, he must be suffering. I might be looking like I'm suffering, but if I tell you I'm suffering, you can't tell me I'm not. So that's totally a non-issue that the law says about suffering. So you have to be 18, that's correct. But essentially in our law now, you have to have an irremediable medical condition, which means a type of a disability or a chronic condition. So if you look at the issue of mental illness, they'd have to have an irremediable medical condition to qualify for euthanasia for mental illness if that were permissible. Now, euthanasia for mental illness does happen in Canada, but you would have to have comorbidity. I'm not going to make more comments than that, but I think there's actually euthanasia for mental illness going on in Canada. I'm just going to make the statement. I'm going to leave it at that. Anyway, Dr. Sonia Gain is an important psychiatrist for a couple reasons. One, he is a past president of the Canadian Psychiatric Association. 2, he teaches at the University of Toronto. He's a psychiatric professor. He's had many clients over the years, and he makes it very clear it's impossible to predict whether mental illness conditions are irremediable. Possible. So, why were we even considering this? First of all, I'm opposed to all killing. I'm opposed to killing people. Nonetheless, when we're talking about euthanasia for mental illness, you can see how absurd the issue has become in Canada. Then, of course, the other issue that got thrown at us, do you realize that if we had allowed euthanasia for mental illness starting March 17th, 2024, which would have been just a few days ago, people who are drug addicts could have qualified for euthanasia. This was shocking to me. I thought I knew almost everything about euthanasia, and I didn't know anything about this. Because this hit the news on October 19th about the conference they had held in Victoria, BC. The federal government held a conference looking at the issue of euthanasia for mental illness. And then one of the issues was whether or not people with substance abuse disorder would qualify. And the answer was yes. Some of them would qualify. And it said that they recognize the assessments for these conditions would be very tricky. Nonetheless, it would be an option. Makes me feel a lot better. Of course, we know Ed Fast, he fought this whole issue of euthanasia for mental illness with Bill C-314. He did an excellent job in that battle, even though he lost at the vote, 167 to 150. What was important about that is 8 Liberal MPs broke rank with their party. That's very important. I think he did an excellent job with the debate on Bill C-314. On February 1st, Health Minister Mark Holland announced that the federal government planned to delay it. Euthanasia for mental illness, and Canada passed Bill C-62 on February 28th. So now we're looking at euthanasia for mental illness as of March 17th, 2027. Something that we shouldn't even be ever considering, not to say that we should even consider euthanasia, but you know what I'm getting to, is still on the table for March 17th, 2027. Let's be brutally honest what this was actually about. This was actually about the fact that euthanasia for mental illness is not popular in Canada. Euthanasia itself is, but that popularity is going down. Euthanasia for mental illness was not popular. Therefore, if we go into an election, the Liberals did not want to carry this with them into an election. That's what this was about. You know, you can say what you want. They never listened to us, this government. So why would they have made the change? Because they were thinking of their own skin. Okay, so then the issue of coming up with this, you know, we had that parliamentary committee decide on February 15th of 2023 that we need to expand euthanasia to mature minors, which is infanticide, and I put down life unworthy of life. What's a mature minor? Mature minors are people under the 18 who are considered capable of consenting. It's not based on an age. And also by advanced request. And as I say, both of these issues really changed the concept of consent, okay? So I'm going to quickly finish this off. Oh, I've used my 20 minutes, and I promised only 20 minutes. So we'll be done in a second. Euthanasia, we know it's sold to the culture as enabling personal autonomy, choice, my body, my choice. You know, but they say it's about suffering and nearing death. They say it's a form of suicide. It's not a form of suicide because people rationally choose to die. These are all the big lie. The big lie. And what's the big lie? The lie that you say over and over and over and over again, and people believe it's true. The big question, though, is why do people ask for euthanasia? And it's because most people who ask for euthanasia, they are going through a difficult health condition. That's true. They feel depressed, lonely. They're experiencing feelings of hopelessness, and they believe their life has no purpose. They're fearing for the future rather than asking for it based on current situation. There's very few people in the data who are asking for this because of uncontrolled pain. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying that is the small group of people why they're asking for this. The majority is because they are going through these conditions. They feel that their life has lost meaning, purpose, or value. Therefore, legalizing euthanasia is not about freedom. It's not about choice. It's not about autonomy. It's about abandonment. And these are deaths of despair. So I think I've said enough for now. And I will close. I will stop share. I'm going to go to Kathy.
Thank you so much. Okay, so my name is Kathy Matusiak Costa. I'm the Director of Compassionate Community Care. It's wonderful to be with you all today, so thank you for joining us. And as an update, as an overview, we're going to talk a little bit about who we are, what we do, and how ultimately you can get involved and help be part of the answer for this. So we are a registered charity comprised of healthcare professionals and volunteers who support vulnerable people and their families during times of illness and crises. We believe all human life has equal dignity and value, and every person deserves to be treated with respect and compassion while receiving the care they need and deserve. So whether you're facing a chronic condition, disability, or end-of-life situation, we're here to help. And some of the services we offer is we offer you answers to questions, and you can call us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on our toll-free, confidential and free helpline and phone line. It's a 185 number listed on the screen here. Feel free to reach out to me or Alex if you need that information. We also have a non-crisis line, which is our regular telephone office line. And so we started in 2010 from the need to protect, educate, and support those who are most vulnerable. We've done a number of various events, fantastic opportunities to share this information with others, including a series on elder abuse prevention. And that's available on our website under videos. And there's fantastic speakers there from Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, an expert consultant there. We have a lawyer as well, Mr. Hugh Scher, and he speaks about the legality and issues around estate planning and elder abuse, and also two fantastic nurses who are practicing both before, during, and after COVID, who share the insights, very interesting, thought-provoking, concerning statistics that have arisen since COVID, especially about care in homes and facilities when it regards with respect to elder abuse and preventing of it. And so what we do is provide advice, help, and support in these areas. It stems from both the patient advocacy side. So we've done multiple calls with people, both on the phone, Zoom, in person, even attending meetings, and specialized appointments where we can provide advocacy. We've also done conflict resolution between families and key members of a patient who needs some support or help. We also provide education, and we respond to issues related to treatment, elder abuse, or even neglect. And we finally provide training programs. And that's a little bit what I'm going to share with you today. I'm so excited to be able to share this with you because it's an opportunity for you to expand and grow and actually learn and apply this information or knowledge to your own community. And it's to help you build dedicated communities of compassionate and giving, generous volunteers. And so this stemmed from the idea of what does actually loneliness do and how does it impact our communities. And we did this survey, fantastic survey towards the end of COVID, where we surveyed over 500 Canadians across Canada. We asked them what was their experience of being a senior during COVID. And we had, three distinct groups: those who were completely isolated, they found it very lonely, depressing, isolating, and because they cut themselves off from everyone. There was a second group that did very well. They actually managed through it. They were positive, and that was predominantly because they actually continued to have contact with their loved ones, their friends, their circles, and they were not feeling alone. And then there's a third group that had only one person in their life, be it a spouse, a friend, a person in the community, or a dog, even a pet. Some even attributed their faith as a single entity that helped pull them through COVID. And that was significant. Why? Because even just one person being in another person's life made all the difference. And those were the people who actually said that they were able to carry on and move through COVID in a positive way and have it not impact them so drastically as the other one. So what do we see here? It's important to be involved with people around us. We know people deserve better, and especially after COVID, we know we have an opportunity and a responsibility to do better. So what do? We offer opportunities for people to connect with others. We know we're meant to be with others. Interconnectedness is essential to the human person. And so by learning and participating in our programs, you'll learn how to journey with others and learn how your presence and being with others will actually affirm their life, reduce their social and physical isolation, affirm their purpose for living, and also reduce their loneliness and reduce their depression. And this is fantastic. This is what will actually be one of the most profound, but yet so simple, practical ways to help alleviate this pressure that people have in experiencing this culture of abandonment. And that's delivered with this program because of being with My Story Visitors program. It's a training. It's very simple. So if you take all the programs out there, this is one of the leading, most practical programs you can have, especially in Canada now, where you as a participant and guest will have the confidence to journey with those who are suffering. They're maybe socially isolated, sick, or dying, and you'll help renew their hope and purpose in life. It's made up of 2 sessions. It's only 3 hours roughly a piece. And that's, about roughly about, actually, sorry, my mistake. Yeah. So it's just, it's about, a few couple hours. And in that time period, you'll come across the training, which will give you actual books. You can actually order the books and we'll ship them to you online, and you'll get a training manual and a workbook. And the workbook is fantastic because we'll expand on that in a little bit. But ultimately, it'll be an opportunity for you to capture the responsive people who you're going to sit down with, meet with, visit with, and interview them about their life and their story. And that's brought to you through both myself and Alex through EPC. And what does this training do? It encompasses all of these points. So we first talk about our human needs, which include our physical, mental, social, and spiritual needs, because we're all human. We all go through these challenges. Anyone can be vulnerable, right? And so it's important to explore that a little bit and unpack it and learn how you can navigate those challenges when you're meeting with and experiencing these moments where persons may be vulnerable, and how to manage it, right? And help them through. Also, you'll get through this visiting advice in terms of very practical, simple, but very easy and accessible tools that you can learn and you can adapt and actually learn to bring into the community. And so others who have taken a program, we've had people from chaplaincy, from medical backgrounds, who have doctors, nurses, lawyers even participate in our training programs. And they have said how simple it is and how beautiful, because they can apply it and use it for their own communities, for their own families, for themselves. We talk about the My Story. We equip you with the actual workbook, and it's fully detailed with questions that you can ask a person when you sit down with them. You can actually interview people that you're sitting with and visiting. So it can be your neighbor, it could be your family, your relative, it could be your own parent. I've done this book with my own father, and he loves it. And it's a wonderful way to partake and impart legacy on that person and significance, both in their community and in their lives, for themselves and for their loved ones. And what's really wonderful is that a person starts to reminisce about their memories, about the roles they played in their life, who they loved, who loved them. And it really brings that importance back. It really brings back the value of who they were in their life, who they were able to live through moments with, and it's very important because it is a form of recall and reminiscent therapy, which has been proven to be so effective in helping people be able to move into their life, especially at end of life, to reconcile those moments. And then finally, we talk about communicating with people with disabilities, how important that is, with various disabilities as well, advocacy at the doctor's office, elder abuse, and how to watch for signs of that, and more. And of course, the My Story tackles all these things, issues about depression, generativity, loneliness. All of this is important and key. So in order for someone to actually go past and further and expand and learn from their importance, who they are, and bring significance into their lives. So we send all these materials to you. It's a very effective program. From that program, we started a second program called the Patient Advocacy Training, which will give you the skills and confidence to be an advocate in the healthcare system. It's a simpler program that it takes only one session, so 2 hours. So the first session was 2 hours and two sets of 2 hours, which are 2 nights. And this program here, Patient Advocacy, is only one session for 2 hours. And it is available on Zoom. And so some of these things that we come across, we've had people who've called our line. We have a business card or a magnet that we can offer you. So if you need those, you can ask us to send you some of these, but these cards have saved lives. And so what it does is it shares our toll-free number. A lady was able to get one of our cards because she went to the librarian. She started talking to her and telling her that she was scheduled for MAID or euthanasia. And the lady said, well, why? Why don't you give these people a call? And so she wasn't able to get a bath in over a year. We helped her, and she got real help thanks to us in many ways. And so we encourage you to do this important work. When you reach out to someone, if you give them a business card or a magnet, feel free to share it with many people. The more people you share with, the more lives you can save. And, we've helped many people, some who have actually put, as they call, MAID on the shelf, because they've reached out to us and we've helped them. And, these calls continue to come in. And so we're here for them anytime. Like I said, 24 hours a day. It's only a phone call away. Our next session, which we'll be hosting for the Being with My Story program, will actually be on May 7th and 14th from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can contact us for details and register online. It will be on Zoom. Oops, sorry about that. And you can see my screen. Okay, great. And so with that training, if you need it, you can actually receive a certificate that says that you've completed the training. For some of our people that helped start the program, and it was this very strong push because it was in the London area, that's where we're located, they actually, we published a fantastic synopsis of stories that were collected in the London area. It's called Her Story. So for those of you who are interested, you can receive that from us. You Are the Difference. These stories share about the difference that people make in each other's lives from a group of women that are part of the CWO in London. And so we've done that. That's actually available on our website. You can receive a copy if you like. Feel free to email us about that. We'll share that with you. And of course, for those of you who want to be a light in the community around you, there's no better way to meet with others and be visitors and effectively volunteer within your community. These are some pictures and snapshots of our own family where we go and do crafts with a group of seniors. And so real ways to help include visiting the elderly, preferably in pairs if you don't know them. We want to encourage you to do, and have social interaction, have informed tea groups or socials. We went to an event a couple weeks ago in Vaughan, a fantastic 70+ group of seniors who get together once a week and they exercise and they have meals together and they have fantastic speakers like us come. And we share that with them. I encourage you to go for walks, develop real friendships within your community, visit retirement residents, and really form a great group of dedicated volunteers that can help assist one another in this effort, because this is really the new change that's happening. Also, I want to just quickly mention we're starting a new exciting seniors calling service. It's already begun. It's fantastic. It's a way for people who are maybe feeling more shut in. They can't get out of their place. Maybe they want a phone call instead of a visit. And this, you can join us. You can be a volunteer. Contact us if you'd like to be part of this exciting program. Finally, there's another wonderful opportunity happening in May. It's called Project Anna and Simon. If you happen to know anyone who's grieving the loss of their loved one because of MAID, because of medical assisted dying or euthanasia, and they've been euthanized, please reach out to us. This is a fantastic healing opportunity. It's a one-day retreat in Toronto. We're actually able to, if cost is a factor, please reach out to us because that can be taken care of as well, thanks to some generous donors. And so we want to encourage you to join us for this event and share this event widely with your community because it is a fantastic opportunity to heal from complicated grief or trauma following MAID. And then, of course, we have this wonderful opportunity too, which is happening locally. It's a gift exchange for seniors, and it is taking our program and training and really making it work for a community that they can participate. And it's a wonderful example of, it's called a Youth Senior Gift Exchange, where they exchange memories and actually complete the program with one another. So if you happen to be in that area of Hastings County, feel free to reach out to us or to our events page. You'll see this listed there as well, and you can get in touch with the organizers. And I do encourage you to join us. Visit us online, beingwith.org. You can link up to us on our events page and register just like you did for today's talk. And feel free to reach out to us anytime if you have any questions. We're here for you, and help is only one phone call away. So thank you so much.
Yes, I am in that picture just before the last run. And we raised a fair amount of money with that run. And Leah has joined us, and Leah's going to talk about a few experiences, especially since Leah was very instrumental also in the whole issue of euthanasia for mental illness and helping us and others to try and convince the government that this was the wrong way to go. That was, I know she's done other things, but that was very important to her.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I don't know about you, but I feel like I just drank from a fire hose. So I'm glad that the slides will be circulated. And I just want to thank everyone for your time. I'm cognizant of the fact that people have busy lives, and this is a really hard issue. And I think it can be very, frankly, itself quite depressing. And so I appreciate everyone taking the time. I'll maybe just kind of comment briefly on my story, and then I'll comment briefly on the law. And I don't know if a lawyer's ever brief, but I'll do my best. I approached this issue first, actually at quite a young age when I was 13. I knew about the issue of euthanasia. I studied it for a school project. And I remember at the time thinking that it was very far off, that there is no way that this could happen in my country, in my lifetime. And so now that we're here, I find myself very surprised. And it is kind of unsettling to think that we got here so quickly. This issue is one that I've worked on from a professional perspective as a lawyer. I formerly was in-house legal counsel for the Christian Legal Fellowship, which intervened in the Carter decision and has made frequent submissions. And even in private practice, obviously, I try to use my voice as a lawyer now to speak out against this issue. But this issue is also very personal for me because I'm someone who has struggled with my mental health. And I have struggled with suicidality. By the time I was 16, I would have attempted suicide a number of times. And I'm also someone, I kind of chuckle when I see government officials talking about how doctors will be able to, figure out who is suicidal and separate them from those who are accessing euthanasia-assisted suicide legitimately, so to speak, that it's a rational desire to die. I chuckle in part because I don't know how many of you have teenagers or maybe teenage grandkids, but when you're in that headspace, when you're experiencing mental health, frankly, your sole focus in life is ensuring that your life does not continue. And I was a very motivated young person. I have no question that I would have been able to, if this had been available, that I would have been able to access it. And that's deeply concerning, because the reality is that with time, with, support from others, for some people with medical treatment, they're able to get better. And so I do think that it is shocking and also deeply disturbing that we're offering euthanasia and assisted suicide soon to those whose only underlying condition is a mental illness rather. But I would say, taking a step back, I would really encourage all of us, as we're kind of wrapping up and maybe as you're thinking of some questions, I would encourage you to think about what is fundamentally at the core of this issue. Because as Alex said, it is not fundamentally about choice and autonomy. And I don't say that because I'm against euthanasia and assisted suicide. I say that because philosophically and legally speaking, what is at issue is not an individual's ability to take their own life. The statistics that Alex quoted, even though in Canada, euthanasia, where a doctor does the killing, versus assisted suicide, where the individual does it themselves, even though both of them are legal in Canada, the vast, vast, vast majority of people access euthanasia. So really what we're talking about is not your ability to exercise agency over your own life. What we're talking about is the government giving permission to a third party to participate in the ending of your life. And that's very different. If you backtrack to the Rodriguez decision, years ago, before 20 plus years before the Carter decision. In the Rodriguez decision, the judges who spoke out against euthanasia and assisted suicide, who said, no, we will not find, there is no issue with holding this line. They talked about, I'd say a number of things, but two in particular. First of all, the idea of the sanctity of life, this idea that human life is inviolable, that even if you say you don't want to exist anymore, that doesn't give license to another person to take your life, that there is something sacred and there's a sanctity to human life. There's something sacred about it. So that was the first idea. But the other idea that was mentioned in the Rodriguez case, was that there was not an agreement that a third party should be able to end your life. Why? Because fundamentally, if I have a third party end my life, that's not about my choice and autonomy. That's about the other person's rights to now take human life. And that actually sets them up, if you're talking legally speaking, that individual, so we're now talking about doctors and nurses, they now are functioning as though they have more rights than other people, namely the right to legitimately take a human life. That's deeply concerning, because there is no other individual in society that has that ability. We don't have capital punishment appropriately. I say that and now I think about the issue of abortion. We'll leave that for another time. But the reality is that it's not permitted for any other person. I cannot go take a human life appropriately. Why? Because I'm equal. I'm not more important or less important. The fact that I'm a lawyer doesn't change my entitlements. It doesn't give me more authority to take a human life. And so I would encourage you to think about the ways that euthanasia and assisted suicide, while we talk about it as personal choice and autonomy, fundamentally, it's about the relationship between individuals and society. It's fundamentally about whether we're equal or whether there are some lives that are less valuable and can be taken, and more valuable and can take life. That's ultimately what this is about. The other thing you should think about, legally speaking, is at the end of the day, we're asking the question in this webinar, where are we going? right? What's the future here? And I would not be surprised, we already know that this is being considered. I would not be surprised if we start talking about euthanasia and assisted suicide for mature minors, so individuals who are under the age of 18. For severely disabled infants, we know that other jurisdictions have already gone there. I wouldn't be surprised if we start talking about, euthanizing individuals without their explicit consent, but in their best interest, these kinds of things. Why would we go there? Because fundamentally, the question that we have grappled with and are grappling with in our society with this issue is the question of whether death is a solution to suffering. And if it is, then any line that we draw is fundamentally arbitrary. Because if death is a legitimate solution to a physically disabled person, why isn't it a legitimate solution to a mentally disabled person or to an infant? Why 18? Why do we have any of these parameters? And we know that arbitrary parameters can still be justified under law, and I'm happy to answer questions about that if folks have questions. But ultimately, the reason we've seen this slide, the reason we always were told that the slippery slope didn't exist, but we have in fact witnessed it. So why have we seen this slippery slope? Because if the answer to the question of whether death is a legitimate solution to suffering, if the answer to that question is yes, then ultimately any effort to draw lines is going to be challenged by those who would like to have access to death. But if the answer to that question is no, if it is always the case that it is wrong to take another human life, if it's always the case that suffering, even a life with suffering, is one worth living, then we won't have this issue. So I would argue that it's fundamentally not possible to have a society that's kind of internally coherent and consistent that has some euthanasia deaths but not others. You either have to have it permitted for anyone who says they're experiencing suffering based on the logic that death is a solution to suffering, or appropriately, you have to have it available for no individuals. So I would encourage people to think about kind of the fundamental philosophical ideas. And so when people in your life say this is about choice and autonomy, I would encourage you to say, no, this is about equal rights. This is about whether a doctor has more rights, including the right to take another human life, than I do. And as has already been mentioned, the euthanasia regime is an exception to the laws in Canada that prohibit another person from being involved in the death of another person. So legally speaking, this is what we're talking about. The last thing I'll say as we wrap up is I would encourage you, dealing with this issue can itself be hopeless. It can feel, it can kind of create despair in us, right? It can feel like we're fighting this battle, this uphill battle, we're sliding down this slope. I've seen people say, we're not even sliding down the slope, like we're off the cliff already. And it can feel that way. It can feel very hopeless. But I would encourage you not to give in to that despair, because just like has already been discussed through the other presentations, the reality is that you have a great deal of power in your family, in your friend group, in your community to bring hope and encouragement to the lives of those who are suffering. You actually have more power than I do, right? I might be the lawyer and we might be the presenters, but I can't reach the people in your life. You can. And while the government is out there, it might not solve the policy issues or the legal issues for you to go visit the local, community of elderly people or to show love to the disabled person in your life, but it will radically impact that person's life. And so I would encourage you to not fall into a place of despair as you see where society is going. That's hard, but know that you're not alone. Know that you can make a difference. Know that you have everything you need already to show love and compassion and suffer with other people in your life who might contemplate this. You can reach people that no one else can. And ultimately, if you feel ill-equipped, that's what people like, Alex is here for. That's what the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition is here for. That's what Compassionate Community Care is here for. So I hope that's encouraging. Thank you all for your time. And we have 10 minutes for questions. So I think we did pretty good, guys.
I think we did fine. I know I took a bit too much time and Kathy went really fast to make up for a few minutes. But anyway, I was going to say that the whole issue of euthanasia for mental illness did show us that it's possible to back this government off. And obviously speaking, Euthanasia Prevention Coalition is not a charity, so I can make this comment. Obviously speaking, we'd all like to see an election, at least for the purpose of getting this government out. At least I would like to see that. Nonetheless, the fact is that we can hold things off, and that was important. But I'm still concerned about several issues, and that was the fact that that report came out from our government in February of 2023 talking about euthanasia for mature minors and euthanasia by advance directive. I'm not suggesting anything's going to happen with that at the moment, because of course at this moment this government doesn't want to carry anything with it that might affect it in a future election. But I am saying that there is still this negativity. But the good news, even though it's not good news for you and I in Canada, it is good news in the rest of the world, is how sad and horrific things have happened here is affecting the rest of the world in a positive way. Meaning that everyone now says, like when we were going through the debate in Canada in 2014, 2015, 2016, people talked about, well, we don't want to be like the Netherlands or Belgium. And of course, there's a lot of stories out of the Netherlands and Belgium of horrific euthanasia cases. And of course, we all knew that. And if you open the door, then you're heading down the road of the Netherlands and Belgium. In fact, one of the reasons Canada went so quick down that road is that road was already paved, right? You already have a paved road. It's easier to go down a paved road than to pave a road first. You know what I'm saying? But nonetheless, people around the world are saying the same thing. We don't want to be like Canada. So you see this, and when you're speaking to places in other countries, it does truly affect them in a serious way. And if that's the only good it's done, meaning that there's people in other jurisdictions who are less likely now to be killed because we have done horrific things in our country, well, then at least that's something good to say. And I'm not going to leave it at that. But I do think what this euthanasia for mental illness has done is it's shown us that we can push the government back. And I do think that that's the beginning, and we cannot be looking at this as, oh, that was the successful one-off. No, we have to look at this. So these kind of things will be continuing, and there's a lot of people who are concerned about these issues. There is a raised hand from Tammy.
I do have a question. I did unfortunately arrive a bit late, so hopefully it wasn't discussed. As a former RN who used to work in end-of-life palliative care in a hospice setting, and trying to advocate for proper mandates and protocols being offered by, and having no safe place to report them without fear of intimidation and coercion. And it ultimately cost me my job because I was advocating so well because of the failures of meeting the criterion of the legal aspects of MAID.
Yeah.
There was just no pathways. And this is a profound reality in our care facilities, is that nurses see these gaps and they know that there's gaps and not proper assessments, but there's no place to really report these things. And I'm just wondering, both like Leah and I think it's Alex, are there pathways out there to activate or for me to report? Because now that I'm not an employee or a union member or a RN, I'm basically without a job, career, a voice. And as a citizen, I'm finding some light within some freedom groups, and they're talking about possibly one of them's the National Citizens Inquiry, looking at doing another deep dive into some huge political health issues or, things that affect all Canadians. I'm just wondering if you guys have any.
So Tammy, if you contact me and talk to, I'm happy to have you talk to Leah too. I'm sure she'd be happy to do that. But the fact of it is we need these stories. See, the difficulty is that you were treated with such disdain for actually trying to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were in the system, they would have slammed you down, but you're not in the system. So the natural question is, do you have the strength to do this? Because there's nothing easy about doing what you would have to do by talking about it. Now, even at first, we'd be willing to publish certain stories without your name on it, because we need to hear these stories. They need to start coming out, because once you start saying it, then that opens the door to others saying, oh, well, I experienced the same thing. But you're not shocked by what I'm saying. There'd be lots of people thinking exactly what you experienced, that how do I bring this up
It's been my experience at the bedside and the complete honoring position that I got to be in and journeying with people at end of life to know that this is such a sacred, important issue. I've gone through some PTSD and some
Yeah.
good healing, and I'm rising strong because I did nothing wrong except for follow the protocols of being a good RN.
Actually, you did nothing wrong. Not only that, you're actually somewhat of a hero. Let's be brutally honest, because you were willing to take it on the chin, trying to do the right thing. So
No amount
you're,
of money,
and
gag
you should-
orders,
and you should look at
non-disclosures,
yourself as being a hero because
Well-
you've survived it.
and I'm here now offering.
Well, we
Sure.
want to work with you, Tammy, because it's these stories that make the difference. Let's just be brutally honest. It's those stories that came out of the media that changed the tide a bit. So when you
Mhm.
look at the latest polling as an example, the general question on euthanasia, let's be brutally honest. If you ask 1,000 Canadians, do you support euthanasia in the case of someone who is nearing death and suffering uncontrolled pain, it doesn't surprise you when 73% say yes. Not because, oh, Canada is so crazy, because Canada has a little bit of craziness to it, but because we're human beings. I don't know of anybody who wants to be suffering uncontrolled death, an uncontrolled pain, right? We know that, right? So,
Oh,
but if you
100%.
start asking about all these other things, like, do you think we should be, I know a nurse who's trying to tell us the truth about what's going on in the institution, you think we should be slamming her down? Well, they would say, of course not. The truth should come out. Anyway, we need you, Tammy. And the only reason I'm mentioning that Leah should be part of it is because it's obviously good to have everything vetted by a legal mind to make sure that what we're saying is being done in such a way that's effective for you and for the general issue, right? Thank you so much. Okay,
Right.
Enjoy has her hand up.
Thank you. First, I want to reiterate with Alex, Tammy, you are a hero. We need more people like you to stand up, step up, and do the right thing. And Leah, thank you for sharing your story. I'm a parent of a young adult man with a developmental disability. I deal with the developmental sector, which is in a mess, just like the healthcare sector. And it
Yeah.
stirs me to know that I have the power to end his life. When you're dealing with people with developmental disabilities like my son, life is ever changing. And it can be very difficult to manage the day-to-day, the lack of supports, the lack of services, the homelessness, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I really have to thank you all for trying to help and make a difference. I'm going to do what I can at my end as well. I'm doing my best. It's scary. It's scary. And I have to wonder if it was an intentional strategy on my government's part to do what they're doing to try and reduce the most vulnerable people with disabilities,
Yeah.
people with mental illness, so that they don't have to provide the supports and services. I hate to think that way, but one must have to wonder about it.
So as you know, Joy, whether it was intentional or not, it is the outcome.
It is.
And they're not trying to repair the outcome, which is another big concern. And people with disabilities or those caregivers or family members should be concerned. You're absolutely right, because this is exactly what's going on. And this is not about free choice and autonomy and all this rest of it. That was the flag that waved to make us think, oh, this is a good thing. It is about abandonment. Absolutely.
And I think too, Alex, I've been reading the legislation quite a bit. It also worries me that if I'm not around, the providers themselves can apply for medical assistance in dying for my son.
Not at the moment they can't.
Not at the moment.
No, the law wouldn't allow. I'm not saying things wouldn't happen. Like, let's be brutally honest. The problem with these laws is that there's no oversight at all. If you look at the law, there is no oversight. And you're talking about life and death without oversight. That's insane. Well, it's all insane anyway, but you know what I'm getting to.
Yes.
But no, they could not do that at this moment, Joy. If they did so, that would be horrific. No, it's all horrific anyway, but you know what I'm getting to. That would certainly be beyond the pale in any way, shape, or form.
But we didn't think that it would get this far. And
No, we
I would
didn't.
not be surprised if it goes in that direction.
And I'm not suggesting you shouldn't be concerned. I'm not suggesting that at all. But I am saying at this time, the law would not say that that's possible.
That's good to know.
But it is the outcome of what's happening, and we need more stories. You know, so the disability community has really done a wonderful thing by encouraging people to bring their stories forward, and that's really helped out, because if that hadn't have happened, people would not have been aware, because these things are happening. But unless someone actually has the strength of character to say, I will now talk about it, no one knows, because it becomes the silent thing that's happening. And
You're absolutely right, Alex. Even in my own family,
yeah.
when I mention it, they are all of the assumption that you have to be terminally ill.
To your point, Joy, I think that it is deeply concerning that there isn't an oversight body. It is concerning that, according to the law, or the cases that have existed so far, if a loved one such as yourself is worried that your son or your parent or your spouse is applying for euthanasia and assisted suicide, and you think something went wrong, you're not actually able to get the courts to intervene, at least not based on the case law that exists right now. So it is really concerning. And I frequently find myself wondering how on earth I live in this country and how things happen so quickly. So I would encourage you to find that balance between vigilance, but also, just making the most of every moment with your son and just being present. Jackie had asked a quick question about, how do we reach out to those in our lives who are experiencing mental health struggles, who are, oh, sorry, you're speaking, Jackie, so I'm rereading. You didn't write hopelessness, you wrote hospices. Any ideas how we can assist people who are being forced to provide MAID? Yeah, so I would say, and this kind of gets to Tammy, your situation as well. There has been a flood of, I would argue, discrimination in terms of individuals being pressured to participate in euthanasia and assisted suicide and being either terminated or pressured to resign from positions. I know a few stories myself who didn't become legal in nature, but I would say in that kind of situation, you should absolutely encourage people to reach out for legal advice. That would be the area of employment law. Just because we're dealing with medical assistance in dying, as we call it, doesn't mean that the law doesn't apply. And so there's still a duty to accommodate if there's a conscientious objection. Obviously, the law on conscience is unfortunately not particularly robust in Ontario right now. But I would say other provinces that have better legislation to protect conscience freedoms. And the reality is that unfortunately the law, because it's man-made in this sense, like the case law is just based off of the information we have at the time. So I would encourage you to continue putting those cases forward. So I don't know if you know specific people, Jackie, but feel free to reach out to me or to other lawyers. And I would encourage you, if you're someone who's going through that, do your best to be reasonable, do your best to kind of check all the boxes and make sure that you're not doing anything obviously that would justify this decision. But if you face that kind of discrimination, then ultimately there are some legal options. But I would just end by reiterating the point that you've been making, Alex, which is that fundamentally, what I've seen in this debate is that all the lawyers and legal experts are pushing the responsibility onto healthcare providers because they're the experts, and all the healthcare providers are pointing to the law and saying we have to do this. And so at the end of the day, this issue, I think, is going to be one in narrative, in stories, in terms of us being able to convince our society that death is not a legitimate solution to suffering. And I frankly, we've said this for years on other issues, I would want to reach a place in society where even if the law didn't change right away, we were so able to reach out to people as a society that people weren't accessing euthanasia and assisted suicide. Government funded healthcare is clearly failing people right now. And that doesn't mean that it's our job to provide all of these same services, but it does mean that we need to step up and do what many generations did historically, which is care for their loved ones as best as they could themselves. And at the end of the day, like Alex said, people are not accessing this because they have physical pain. They're really accessing this because of existential suffering, emotional suffering, loneliness, isolation. And that is a need that we can absolutely fill. So I would encourage you to go to your local, long-term care facility, or, reach out to the loved one in your life who might be alone. Don't let your loved ones go to the hospital alone. I've heard doctors say that. Accompany them. And I think if we just build that community of compassion and care as compassionate community care is doing, then we'll be able to fight back against this in our communities, and other people will notice.
So in conclusion, I want to thank Kathy because of all the work she's been doing. She didn't show you her baby, but she's got a little 2-month-old little son that she's caring for at the same time. So she's very busy, but the training that's going on and the compassionate community care communities that are being built, it's not the only answer, but as we know, it's a positive cultural shift that we're trying to create. And there's the only way to do it is to begin and to keep going. That's what she's doing. This new calling program, we think will have amazing benefits to so many people who are lonely and thinking that their life has no meaning. I think Leah, because Leah has actually been helping out in quite a few ways, but she's become someone who I've really am growing in more and more trust, because she is very smart in her legal understanding, and I appreciate her so greatly, and you probably appreciated her too today. Thank you very much for joining us. We've been a little bit over time, but not too much. And thank you. Bye.